This video came about like the last Peril video. I was reading Escaping Peril and someone on the internet annoyed me. The Peril is a hybrid video came about because I was taking a Wings of Fire Kahoot quiz and got a question wrong because the creator decided to make the answer that yes, Peril is in fact a hybrid. So of course, I wrote a whole video disproving them. Yes, we love the pettiness. And I just so happened to be on Escaping Peril for my reread of the series. I've probably read/listened to the book about 4 or 5 times. Granted, I wasn't really paying the best attention, and the first time I read the book, I was in 5th grade. So this time around, with my superior intellect, I was prepared to better understand and pay closer attention to Peril's character, the theming, and the morals. Before I even started the book, I misunderstood what her arc and the theme would be. I honestly expected some sort of accept yourself and your fire scale sort of message and theme. That is not it though. One crucial thing about Peril is that she already does accept herself and her fire scales. That's not what's wrong with her. So this video will be about Peril's arc and the themes and messages of Escaping Peril. Escaping Peril starts with a Ruby POV from 7 years ago. Ruby is absolutely terrified of Scarlet, but her sister Tourmaline wants to challenge her for the throne soon. Ruby wakes up one day and Tourmaline is gone. Queen Scarlet sends for Ruby and we're introduced to a very young Peril. Queen Scarlet has her burn all of the Brightest Night Skywing eggs, and Ruby assumes that Queen Scarlet had Peril kill Tourmaline. Peril is very young at this point, and we can already see that she's not a malicious psychotic killer, as this line implies. But, she said, her voice swallowed by the heat of the air in the hushed room, but I burned it. Peril didn't want to burn those eggs, but Queen Scarlet, the only dragon who will even speak to her, is telling her to. Peril absolutely craves Queen Scarlet's love and approval. Throughout the entire book, she thinks constantly about Scarlet. Queen Scarlet has manipulated her to think that no other dragon will ever love her, so she needs Queen Scarlet to like her, otherwise she'll have no one. And Ruby blames Peril for murdering her sister. She's horrified by Peril and doesn't see an actual dragon, just her mother's weapon. Ruby's acceptance of Peril is very important for the story, but we'll discuss that later on. Let's talk specifically about Scarlet's abuse towards Peril. There's a line from later on that gives us a good idea how Scarlet treated Peril. "He'll be my adorable little weapon," said Scarlet, "and he'll forget all about you. I will be his everything. I'm the only one who cares about you. No one will ever love you except for me. You'll always be a monster to everyone else." Scarlet's words rang louder and louder in Peril's head. What she was describing, that's what she did to me. She made me obedient. She made me loyal to her. She made me think I had no other choice. Also, keep in mind, for Peril's entire dragonettehood, only Queen Scarlet and an older Skywing named Osprey would even speak to her. Queen Scarlet also killed Osprey in front of Peril for telling her too much. So that's not traumatizing at all. Scarlet constantly tells Peril that no one will love her and that she's an unlovable monster and that Scarlet is the only one who will ever love her. And Peril believes this. She needs Scarlet to love her, to care for her, because if she doesn't, then Peril won't have anyone. And keep in mind, she can kill someone just by touching them. Can you imagine that? Imagine it being so easy and that you've done it since you were a young child. Of course it's hard to get over that. Scarlet has been the only influence in her life for 7 years. Clay actually talking to Peril and showing any kind of care for her is huge. It starts to dismantle everything Scarlet has told her. Her relationship with Clay is essential to her arc. Clay is like a new Scarlet to Peril. Peril runs every thought and every action by either Scarlet or Clay. Here's a line from Scarlet. "Oh," said Scarlet, "that sounds new. Have you had any of these thoughts of your own yet? All I've seen from you so far are those Mudwing's thoughts and decisions. If you actually have one of your very own, I can't wait to hear about it." And yeah, it's Scarlet, but it's also very, very true. The whole reason she went out to find and kill Scarlet is because she thinks that's what Clay secretly wants her to do. Clay is her, "As long as this person is my friend, then I'll be okay, friend," which I relate to. Speaking of relatability, let's get into Peril's insecurities. She shields all of her insecurities with a "I don't care" attitude or laughing it off. You can see this every time she says she needs to reach inside her to the part of herself that doesn't care. The constant rejection she gets from other dragons really hurts her. Here's a line from the book after she gets a crocodile thrown at her in Possibility. It was strange to realize that things like that could hurt more on the inside of your scales than the outside. It was strange to realize that a dragon who couldn't be hurt on the outside could have so many ragged holes on the inside. She is so hurt by all the constant rejection. Even though she's a changed dragon, everyone continues to treat her like a monster. Every time this happens, she thinks back to what Scarlet had always told her, that no one will ever love her. Now Peril is at Jade Mountain, and this is the start to Peril's arc. She starts doing some good things, but every good thing she does is because she thinks about what Clay would do. She does good things so that Clay won't hate her. She wants to become a better dragon because, quote, Clay was the only dragon who saw more good than bad in her. Before this, she did bad things because that's what Scarlet wanted. Now she's doing good things because that's what Clay wants. So now she has a good influencer in her life. Someone to remind her to do better. So this is a good step up and a great way to start her arc. Also, I just want to say real quick, when people say they relate to Peril or see a lot of themselves in Peril, like me, they're not saying they relate to her murdering people, they are relating to her social awkwardness or insecurities. I personally think it's very relatable to worry whether your friends actually like you or not, and I find myself relating to a lot of her insecurities. One of my absolute favorite parts of this book is her relationship with Turtle. I don't ship them romantically, I just really love their friendship. And it is so good for Peril to have another dragon who cares about her. Turtle also reveals a lot about how Peril deals with relationships. She has a really hard time believing that Turtle actually likes her and isn't using her for something. This comes up constantly, and Peril also thinks very practically about her friendships. Here's a passage from the book that illustrates this. There were a number of excellent reasons not to set Turtle on fire, which outweighed any potential benefits to doing so. Very practical. She literally has a list of reasons not to set this dragon on fire. Also this line. Her only friend before Clay had been killed by Queen Scarlet for telling Peril too much. Well then, maybe she needed more friends so that some of them could be expendable. While this line is absolutely hilarious, it's also very telling. She needs at least one dragon who cares about her, so her mind is thinking, I better get a few friends in case anything happens to any of them, which is really sad. When Peril first meets Turtle, she expects him to run away from her, but he doesn't. No matter how many death jokes or awkward exchanges she makes, he stays and treats her with kindness. And this is really new for her. Basically, every other student in Jade Mountain runs away screaming every time they see her. And Turtle jokes with her and includes her when he goes to eavesdrop on the Prophecy Dragonettes talking with Ruby. And then he runs off with her when Scarlet flies off and Tsunami chases her. It's just a really wholesome, nice little friendship. Now, Moon, Kibbley, and Winter are less friendly with Peril. Peril literally almost burns Winter to death by accident when Winter comes back to Possibility. Winter has the bright idea to try and fight her. He loses. Obviously. Silly little ice dragon. Oh, Winter, I love ya, but you're kind of an idiot. Now, Winter hates Peril. Which makes sense, with all the ice wings she's killed. Kibbley and Moon are also not big fans of Peril. Moon is constantly making comments about Peril's mind. Peril always sizes up dragons for a fight, which makes sense. She's been a gladiator fighter her whole life. Of course she does. It might be a little awkward to read how exactly someone plans to kill you though, so... But Kibbley also does the exact same thing. There are a lot of double standards when it comes to Peril, actually. I mean, at the end of the day, Peril just did what her queen wanted her to do. And that's what everyone else did too. But anyway, Moon and Kibbley do come around towards the end of the book. And that's really wholesome and nice. When Turtle goes to the doctor to see Kinkachu, he leaves Peril behind. This makes her very upset. With all her insecurities, this just seems to confirm that Turtle doesn't actually like her and was just using her. So she runs off and finds Soar, who's actually a Rainwing named Chameleon. And he, like every Wings of Fire fan, has an OC for each tribe. Turns out he's also Peril's father. I made a whole video on whether or not Peril is a hybrid, so if you're interested, go check that out. This is a big moment for Peril, another dragon who loves her. Chameleon is absolutely awful, but he is really kind to Peril, and despite everything, he's not an evil dragon. But as it turns out, Chameleon is working with Queen Scarlet. Peril's hesitation to actually kill Queen Scarlet is very interesting and telling. Throughout the entire book, Peril is constantly worried about making Clay hate her, and wondering what would happen if she did something unforgivable and he hated her forever. This comes up especially when she accidentally almost kills Winter, so it makes a lot of sense that she doesn't want to kill her safety net, the one dragon she knows who will accept and love her, as long as she does whatever Scarlet wants, that is. Peril hesitates just long enough so she gets an animus spell placed on her. It takes away her fire scales, makes her forget about Clay, and makes her completely loyal to Queen Scarlet. This is the point in the book where her development really kicks into gear, and we see just how much she has changed. Every right and moral action she takes under the spell, every hesitation is 100% her. We can see that she is capable of these thoughts without Clay. All of these thoughts are her own. And once the spell is placed on her, she is fully a Scarlet pleaser again. They fly back to the kingdom, kidnap a child, and wait for Queen Ruby to come home. When Ruby does get back, all of her anger is directed at Peril and not Scarlet. One thing I really like about this book is Ruby. All of her behavior towards Peril and Scarlet makes total sense. Scarlet used Peril to scare everyone, and the moment Ruby saw Peril, Scarlet is already using Peril to intimidate her. And Peril has claimed that she's changed, and that she's a better dragon now. So to come back to the kingdom and see her working with Scarlet again must be infuriating. And despite all her worrying and warnings to the Prophecy Dragonettes, they've all convinced her that Peril has changed. And now Peril is betraying them. It's the I told you moment that you really hope doesn't happen. The little dragonette that they kidnap is named Cliff, and he's Ruby's son. He is absolutely adorable. I love him so much. He's also very important for Peril's development. Cliff and Ruby's relationship is something that she can directly compare to hers and Scarlet's. Here's a passage from the book that I find really important. Because Uncle Vermilion said Mommy's coming home in the morning, and she makes everything better no matter what. Peril wondered if she could actually collapse around the chasm that had suddenly yawned in her chest. She makes everything better. Peril had never felt that way about anyone. Queen Scarlet kept her alive, gave her a purpose, valued her, but made things better? No. Peril's days were made worse whenever she encountered the Queen. Watching Ruby and Cliff is what finally makes her turn on Scarlet and take her enchanted necklace off. It's that awakening to just how awful Scarlet is. Peril treats Scarlet like a mother, but Scarlet treats her like a toy, like a weapon. Peril is not a dragon to Scarlet. One of the most crucial things to Peril's arc is Ruby's forgiveness. I really love Ruby's development in this book. It comes down to this line from Scarlet. After I kill you, do you know what I'm going to do to him? I'm going to make him fear me. I'm going to make him so loyal to me that he'll forget your name. He'll obey my every command. I'll use him until he becomes a dragon you wouldn't recognize. By the time I'm done with him, he'd kill you with his own talons if I'd tell him to. He'll be my adorable little weapon, said Scarlet, and he'll forget all about you. I will be his everything. This is the moment that Ruby realizes that Peril is not a sociopathic killer or a monster. She's a dragon who was manipulated by her evil mother, a dragon whose only influence was an abusive manipulator. She realizes that it could just as easily have been her own son. This all culminates into the next passage. Your Majesty, I'm sorry about the eggs on the brightest night. Stop, Ruby said. She drew Cliff closer under one of her wings. Listen, you are only a dragonette, not much older than Cliff. And Scarlet was the only parent you ever had, or friend, or anything. None of the rest of us even tried to see you as a real dragon. I saw a weapon, and that was it. But now, I think about what could happen to Cliff if he'd been born with fire scales, or if my mother had gotten her claws on him. I think a lot about how it'll turn out with me as his mother, so I don't blame you anymore. I really, really love Ruby's arc in this book, and her fight with Scarlet is probably one of my favorite fights in the entire series. So, during this fight, Ruby is losing to Queen Scarlet, and Chameleon is sat beside Peril. He lets slip that there's a spell on Ruby and that Tourmaline is still alive somewhere. Peril flies down to the fight and rips off Ruby's earring. Instantly, she transforms into Tourmaline, meaning that Ruby is a fake identity and that Ruby was actually Tourmaline the entire time. After this, flies away, and Ruby/Tourmaline kills Scarlet and becomes Queen of the Skywings. Now, the end of Peril's arc is when she decides to burn Darkstalker's scroll. After all this Ruby and Scarlet stuff, Turtle finds Peril and they go and track down Moon, Kibbley, and Winter. Chameleon has escaped, so they all go after him. They get the scroll, Moon admits she's been talking to Darkstalker, she runs off in the night with a scroll, and Peril chases her down to try and stop her. Everyone catches up and starts arguing about what to do with the scroll. Peril decides to stop everyone by getting rid of the scroll forever. Despite her accidentally releasing Darkstalker by doing this, it's a moment for her to do the right thing without thinking about what Clay wants her to do. Peril's whole arc is about learning to think for herself, to do good things because she wants to, not just because that's what Clay would do. It's really sweet, and it sucks that this action leads to Darkstalker's release, but it is not her fault. Darkstalker literally lied to Moon, saying that burning the scroll would leave him trapped forever, so this isn't Peril's fault. Even still, she feels really bad about it. Overall, I just wanted to talk about Peril in this book. I honestly wasn't expecting to relate to her as much as I did, so I think it's really sad when people overlook everything that happened to her in this book, and completely disregard her arc. Peril is not a psychopath or a sociopath. She's an ordinary dragon born with fire scales who was abused and manipulated. And it's totally okay not to like Peril, by the way, or to not like this book. All I'm saying is, don't miss the themes of the book and Peril's arc. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to see more Wings of Fire videos, I have more up on my page, and clicking the subscribe button makes sure you never miss an upload. And if there's a specific dragon or book you'd like me to talk about, please leave me a comment. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.